UVA. Oh, wow, it's a really cool school. What do you teach? And I'm always hesitant because I know when I pull out the word Dracula, they're gonna start laughing. It's usually the response people start laughing, and they're like, what kind of courses my kid taking here? Dracula. I'm paying what, $5,000, $8,000 for this class called Dracula. What's it about? You know, so the problem is that the title is really deceptive. When you hear just the title, people make it. You know, everyone's heard the name Dracula. Have you ever read the book? I'm just curious.
Never read the book, seen the movies back in my film studies classes back in St. Vincent.
Yeah, there's tons of adaptations. That's the thing that I always find really interesting, even with students, is I'll have a handful, maybe 3 to 5 students a semester, who have actually read the book. Most people haven't actually read the book that I've talked to you about the book, but they've heard of it, and they think that it's the greatest, horror novel ever written, and Dracula is, the greatest villain in the history of English literature, at least. But in reality, most people haven't actually read the book, and when they do, they're often like, "Wow, this sucks. This really isn't that good of a book. Why is this so famous?" So people, when they hear the class tell, they think, it's just about the book, or maybe it's about the character, and how much can you say about that? And it isn't. The reason I kept the title primarily, first reason really is because that was the name it was always known as before I took it over. He had been teaching the course here, Dr. Bukowski at UVA, for probably 30 years, maybe longer, before I was even his TA. And originally the course was called The Vampires of the Slavs, I think is what he called it. He retitled it Dracula, maybe in the 70s or 80s, I forget when it was. But that was the name everyone knew it as. Everyone knew the course called Dracula. So it didn't make any sense to change the title because it would have confused people, and it already had a little bit of word-of-mouth advertising clout just by the name, because everyone knows the name Dracula. So it'd be stupid to change it. The problem is that the name is still deceptive now. Well, I don't know what, it wasn't really then, but it is now. So when they take the class, I don't know what they really think when they're coming into it. I never ask a student, what do you think this class is about? Because I usually have heard some things from people already. And people typically think, well, it's about the novel or the character, and that's it. It's not. The title is deceptive. Really, the character Dracula, and the reason I kept the title too, isn't just because of the name recognition. It's because Dracula is the most famous vampire in the history of media. Everything. It's in comic books, it's in books, it's in video games, it's everywhere. And everyone knows that name. And it's symbolic of it's a conglomeration of roughly like 3,000 years of cultural development. Something that you consume today in a few seconds or a few minutes in a video game has hundreds, or if not a few thousand years of development behind it. And really the course covers where did all that come from and what is it. That's really, in a nutshell, what it's about. And so what I do in terms of like how it's laid out is just an introductory lecture, of course, where I explain course policies and things like that. But then the first lecture, I start with the prehistory of people called the Slavs from Eastern Europe. This cultural group of Slavs, where they came from, and that leads us on our path to explain where the vampire came from. So we'll talk about mythology, we get into anthropology. So it really surprises students when they take it because they come in there thinking, if they haven't heard of it at least, well, what is this, right? I'm going to learn about, the character, whatever. And then they discover they're learning about diseases. We talk about things like racial identity, racial politics, sociology, anthropology, things that you wouldn't expect. Tons of things go into this one image, and that's really what the course is. It covers the vampire's development from pre-Christian, Slavic Eastern Europe to modern day stuff, and shows you how really the vampire has been there for centuries and really sort of has tracked our progress as a species and our failures and our hopes. It basically represents us now and has become a symbol for almost anything. Whenever originally the vampire was a symbol primarily, it was a demon. It was primarily a symbol for death and disease, and that's how they used it to explain those things. They didn't have science, right? They didn't have a theory about viruses. They didn't have germ theory. Nothing about bacteria. They knew nothing about vitamins. None of that stuff. So the vampire explained symptoms of disease, So it explained anemia or liver problems. That was what that thing did. It was part of their belief because it explained things they lacked the science to explain. So over time, it's gone from that to now being a symbol of racial tension and homosexuality and fear of AIDS and almost anything you can think of that human beings have been through over the past 100 years especially, have been symbolized in some way by the vampire. It's absolutely amazing how one thing, which essentially in essence, people today always talk about things like cultural appropriation online. And what does it mean? Is it bad? Is it good? The vampire is the biggest and most famous example of cultural appropriation in history, but nobody thinks about it like that. That's exactly what it is. It was an idea that was taken from a different culture and adapted and changed over a couple hundred years. It's amazing what the changes it's undergone. But That's what the course is about, really. How did that happen? What is it about? And what does it say about us as a species, really? And that's really what the course is. It's really about human experience and what we are. And the vampire just makes it fun to talk about. It's really what it is.
That's awesome. That's all very fascinating. And Stan, obviously, a lot of what you just said, of course, ties into, I read your paper here about demonology, and that's kind of what I want to get into next. So I do want to make sure I have the title right. So you wrote a paper called Demonology, a Study of What Is Not, and I believe it was published in the Skeptical Inquirer. Does that sound right?
Yep, that's right.
So what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about this paper, and I think as we kind of go through this, it'll pick up basically it seems like a lot of elements of how you define what demonology is and is not comes out, and of course in this Dracula course you teach as well. So for the most part, the topic of the paper, demonology, it starts off by saying obviously today we use that phrase the wrong way. The way that we use demonology is not necessarily what it is. And then you also have the paper define, but what is a demon first? So what I'd like to do, just to introduce the paper, introduce demonology, let's start with the problem as you define it, that demonology, that phrase, is just simply how we use it the wrong way today.
Okay, so I don't remember if I actually talked about it in the article, but I'll just say what I usually, because I actually talk about this in one of my lectures too, in Dracula. So the thing about demonology is that I this is something I actually haven't researched myself. It will be interesting. I think maybe someday I'll do just for fun, or in the publish another article, is to figure out how exactly the usage of this term in an incorrect way has developed over time. Back during the witch craze, we're talking 15th century up to the late 17th century, the idea about a demonologist at that time is it basically was a witch hunter. It was a witchologist, for lack of a better word, really, because they actually believed in demons and they believed in witchcraft and they believed that witches needed to be hunted down, tried, executed, tortured, whatever. So really those people that were saying they were demonologists were really just witch hunters primarily, or they were discussing this ridiculous notion that people were witches, and it wasn't even true. So the word, though, that tradition there, it would be interesting to actually track how it became what it is in modern day. How you usually see it today, and what I'm talking about in that article, is you get tons of these like ghost hunter groups or these shows like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that. They're total crap, right? There's nothing those shows verify more than ghosts don't actually exist. They never find anything. They have to try to make it exciting by faking things sometimes. There's been lots of controversy about that. Or, the commercials make it look like they're going to find something really interesting in this next episode. And you spend an hour or two watching it, and they step on a twig or something and record it, and you're like, oh, all right, that's it. And then they don't find anything yet again. So those shows, occasionally I've seen they'll have these people on there that will say, I'm a demonologist. I'm a demonologist, and they'll walk around with like a crucifix and a pentagram necklace at the same time. It's like, first off, like, pick your symbol. Like, which religion are you representing there? You can't do both. Like, I mean, which one are you exactly? And, they'll go around with a holy one. They have no idea what they're doing. It's a total joke. A demonologist is not a demon hunter. And that seems to be how the word has developed into current English, at least, is it's somebody who hunts demons. And I'm not sure exactly, again, it would be interesting to research how this happened from these original witch hunters to the modern day. Because in essence, what demonology is, as a word, is you have two main definitions. You have the first definition, which is demonology is a belief in a system or existence of demons that apply to whatever your religion is, right? And there's a sort of system of demonology, you could say, that those demons are a part of, that encompasses your beliefs and whatever else. You can't be a demonologist in that capacity. If you are talking about demonology in the sense of religion that you believe in and have faith in, and the demons that you believe are a part of that you're supposed to fight against, or however you define it, you can't be a demonologist there, because that's not what a demonologist is. That's just demonology. That means you have a system of demonology that you believe in. A demonologist there doesn't make any sense. A demonologist is simply somebody who studies the myth of demons. They study demons as myth, right? So it's basically a mythologist, somebody who studies myth with a focus on demons. That's it. That is all it is. You don't go around hunting demons, I've been asked a number of times to perform exorcisms. I did one not too long ago that I won't get into. It wasn't even really an exorcism. So when people think I'm going to do an exorcism and they see what I actually do, they're like, what is this? I basically get them to fight against ideas in their head and not actual demons, because it's total crap. There's nothing to fight against. Demonologist who studies myth of demons. So maybe you're really interested in demons from Asia, and China in particular. You can study those things. In my case, my primary study has been demonology in Eastern Europe. So I know a great deal about various demons in Eastern European belief, including the vampires. So that's the most famous one. There are tons of other ones, though. That's all it is. So I don't really know exactly why this word began to take on this meaning of demon hunter, demonologist. There are tons of people like this, too. There's this video I just saw on Facebook about this 2 weeks ago. There are these two young girls. I forget the name of the guy who, I don't know if he's their father. He's this well-known, Christian scammer, basically, who pretends that he exorcises demons. You can buy his silver demonologist cross or whatever it is on his website, for like $100 or what. I don't even know how much it is. I don't remember. But he has these two teenage girls who go around. I think they call themselves the teenage demonologists or something like that. And there was a video that was circulating around Facebook about a week or two ago of them doing exorcisms. Total bunk. It's not what a demonologist is. If you want to perform exorcism and you're a Christian and you believe in demons, that's a totally different thing. You don't call yourself a demonologist there. You call yourself a Christian. And you're performing exorcisms, and that's the end of it. You don't say I'm a demonologist. It doesn't make any sense. Demonologist is somebody who studies demons as myth, and that's all it is. But that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so to kind of summarize what you said there, Stan, as I read your paper, what you essentially would look at and say a demonologist would be essentially like a scientist or researcher, someone who studies a classification of demons, and it might be of a particular religion or of a particular culture. But I want to read one line here in your paper that I kind of outlined that I thought was interesting. You say, "It is not so simple to say I am a chemist without an actual background. It would, in fact, be ridiculous. Unfortunately, demonology does not share the same benefit, though it is an actual field of study."
Yeah.
Now, what I also would like you to talk about, Stan, is you kind of define demons. So on the one hand, the paper defines demonology, but you also then go into, well, what is a demon? And can you give us a little bit of a historic perspective on how that phrase kind of gets tossed around? Because on one hand, you say there's the Judeo-Christian view of what a demon is, and then in other cultures, it simply encapsulates maybe something that is just bad or evil. Can you talk about a little bit about what a demon is, or what the word means maybe in different cultures?
The term demon.
Correct.
By the way, I just texted them. So they refer to these girls as the teenage exorcists. Teenage exorcists.
Well, it rolls off the tongue. It's good branding. The teenage exorcist.
It does. Buffy the Vampire Slayer or something. Okay. So first off, in terms of the term demon, I mean, typically when you hear it now in a Christian context, they're specifically talking about some sort of entity that assists the devil in some way, or harms people, or possesses them, or whatever. In terms of the demonologist and what the word demon is as a way to classify things, a demon by definition is just any sort of malicious entity that can harm human beings or their property in some way. That's all it is. So here's the thing that makes that kind of strange people when they hear what it is that a demon could include something like a brownie, for example, a little forest creatures that could live in your house and stuff like that. That's a demon. Vampire, technically a demon. So you got it. So the problem is that most people now are coming from a Western Judeo-Christian tradition, where when they hear demon, they think of something with horns that relates to the devil. And in essence, that's not what it is in terms of demonology. A demon is any sort of malicious entity. And malicious doesn't mean it's going to kill you or make you sick. It might just annoy you. It might just break your dishes, whatever it is. It might steal your socks. Those are things that demons can do. So in terms of demonology, that's how you're defining it. But in terms of Christian background, people say demon, they mean something else entirely. So the word demon, or in Russian, demon, it really is the same thing, regardless of your east or west. If you're coming from a Christian tradition, especially, you're referencing something that has some sort of power from the devil or something like that. That's what that is. But in demonology, when you study demons, demon is any sort of thing that can harm people in some way, or annoy you, or irritate you. That's all it is. So for example, let me try to think of a counter example. So an angel, for example, or entities like angels, nobody would think of them as having any sort of negative connotation. Like, they don't do anything negative to you, whereas demons do. But it encompasses a lot more things than you would expect. Lots of things can be demons, and they aren't necessarily fully bad. They can be half good, and sometimes sad, annoying. It's really pretty